Right. So we should all be able to see my screen. And like I mentioned earlier, we are talking about CSVs today. And it's in the same realm of databases because we essentially can think of CSVs as being very primitive forms of databases. Because really, the theme this week is data and data manipulation. Not only are we going to learn how to manipulate data in Python, um, with both CSV data and maybe even JSON data, but we'll also learn how to use Python to interact with a PostgreSQL database, which Rena will run through setting up on your machine tomorrow. Then on Thursday, we'll set up a Flask application, again using Python. And what Flask is, it's a very lightweight web server that will allow you to build some very simple APIs, API endpoints to accept external requests, HTTP requests, REST requests. API is essentially application, oof, I'm blanking, programming interface. And it's the communication gateway between the user and the application. So that's what we're setting up this week. After we do it on our local machines on Thursday, we'll learn how to do it in an EC2. So while it's not quite deploying an app completely, it's going to introduce some challenges that will be very good to learn how to overcome. Like Len mentioned before we started the recording at the start of class today, a big key component of being a DevOps engineer is learning how to work within an environment, a terminal, and not just the one on your local machine, but all of the other terminals that you could effectively interface with, right? When you run the Python command in your terminal, that's opening up a Python terminal. You'll see tomorrow when you run PSQL, you'll be opening up a pSQL terminal. When you SSH into an EC2, you're essentially SSHing into another machine, a different environment. And within that different machine, the different environment, you could continue to set up new additional environments and terminals. So being able to think through all those abstractions of different layers and navigate between them is might be challenging at first, but it's important to being a DevOps engineer, and it's something that you'll just have to get comfortable with through practice and repetition. So that's what we're going to do this week. We're going to learn some basic Python, just enough to get some boilerplate code running, and then we'll repeat that process a few times, one on your local machine, and then again on an EC2, where because it's a different operating system from what you have locally, you may have to learn alternate ways to accomplish what you learned how to do on your local machine. Any questions on that?
Hey Julius, I know we were moving on. I really quickly tried to um, copy a file over to the EC2. I
Mhm.
got a different error, so hopefully after lecture we can talk about that. But yeah,
Sounds good. Yeah, we'll do that. And let's see. Okay. So with databases, what are databases? They are structured information, collections of structured information. And we interact with them all the time. Whenever you're interacting with any application, you're interfacing with a database in some way, most likely. There's many different kinds. We're primarily working with relational databases, which utilize management systems like pSQL, MySQL, etc. But there are also newer, more recent types. I'm blanking on the name of this, but if you're familiar with things like Firestore or DynamoDB, these are databases that are less, let's say, um, permanent, and they're better used for things like managing state within an active session. But we don't have to worry about any of that right now. We just got to worry about running databases locally. And before we even get to that, we're going to want to talk about CSVs because CSVs are, like I mentioned, essentially a primitive version of databases. A database will allow you to do a lot of like complex permutations and retrieve data in various ways. You'll learn about things like different joins and a whole slew of different commands to interact with the database in a different way. Whereas CSV is way simpler. It's literally just comma separated values. It can't get any simpler than that. I mean, that's where the name comes from. CSV is comma separated values. It's essentially just data separated by a delimiter, the delimiter being the comma. And we also have another delimiter actually that's invisible here, but it's the new line delimiter. That new line at the end of all of these lines is what indicates to an interpreter that we are now entering the next row of our CSV, which is again like a very primitive table. Aspects of the CSV format, it's a delimited data format. So you have to be very mindful of the boundaries that you're setting with your commands. It's tabular data storage, just like within a database. You basically navigate through rows and columns, and its simplicity is what really makes it very accessible. So let's say in like a real world environment, when you're working with other teams, you won't always be working with other engineers. If you're working with like, let's say, business folks or product managers, and you're working around data that's collected from a database, they may, or they may not know SQL, right? They may not know how to interact with a database. And so they might request data in a simpler format, like a CSV file. So this is foundational to all of the things you'll be learning later on, the more complex things with databases and database data manipulation through databases. So there's some history here, not super critical to what you need to know to operate all this stuff. And since we want to make some extra time for SSHing later on, let's just kind of skip through some of this history. I'll also just kind of blaze through a few of these as well. But the point of this slide is that you need to be mindful of how you type your data, right? In this example, all of these lines may be interpreted differently based on where you're passing that data in. So I think, Mikhail, you were asking earlier about well, do we need quotations or not? It's hard to say because it depends on where that data is going. If you send this to Microsoft Excel, it might be treated differently from if you were to send it to Google Sheets or numbers, whatever, iOS numbers, or even an app, a simple app that was built by developers in your company, right? So similar to how with Page's shell command, it's going to behave differently on different machines. Even a row of data in a CSV may behave differently in different contexts. So be mindful of that. If you want to be especially careful about things, just be familiar with the syntax that whatever application you're working with is expecting. And just be prepared to be flexible because you might have to switch things up as you send your data around to different contexts and locations. Expanding on that a bit. So, for example, an embedded line break may not be supported in one case. So one interpreter might output it as this, another might output it as a single line. You'll start to see some of this as well as you're copy pasting data from like, I don't know, Google Docs, Google Sheets, VS Code, or Slack. All of these different applications will slightly vary in how they handle the data that you're copying and pasting. And so this is where some of that troubleshooting will come into play. Here's an example, a very basic example of what a front end might look like. So instead of having a screenshot of a real app, we just used some basic shapes to build this um, really basic looking UI. Pretend this is inside a web browser and you're seeing basically a table maybe of cars being pulled from a car database. So because not all applications might render new line syntax or the new line, the embedded line breaks the same way, you may have to manually use things like /n to force a new line. But also be mindful that some applications may not know how to interpret that or might just want to interpret it as plain text. See? So all of this to say, you're going to have to finagle with data very frequently. So just be prepared to do that. Today's challenges, we have word guess, which is more algorithmic, and then we have JSON and CSV, which will emulate a lot of what we're going to demo in our VS Code terminal today. So let's switch over to database lessons. We're going to run through. Oh, yeah, I guess let's also cover some Python basics. So we're going to manipulate some data in a Python script. And a few of you are familiar with Python already. Some of you may not be. It is a programming language, an object-oriented programming language to be specific. And the reason we want to highlight that is because it heavily utilizes concepts like encapsulation and abstraction. And encapsulation is actually kind of very simple if you visualize it like so. The idea of objects in an object programming language is that you can encapsulate everything that belongs to that object within, I guess, a capsule or an object, right? So if we were to define a class, which is essentially a blueprint or a template for these objects, we then instantiate that class to create objects. And each instance of the class is going to have a copy, its own copy of the methods and variables that you've defined inside of the class or the template. Any questions on that? And it's okay if there is, because there might be simpler ways of explaining it. But if there are no questions, all of that information is here, ready for you to review at any given point. We try to break it up into digestible bullets because, again, we don't have as much time as the full stack curriculum to dive into these things over a number of weeks. Some key things to remember, because we're working with data and methods, we're going to start using some words exchangeably here, right? Variables is essentially data attributes. Variables are containers, their own mini capsules for the data that we assign to them. So because it's data, it's going to have a data type, an integer, a float, a string, bool. And if you're not familiar with some of these, you'll get familiar over time. Bool is short for Boolean, which is essentially just true or false. It's a true or false value. List, dict, set, and tuple are all data types that work with bodies of data, collections of data. Let's not worry about set or tuple at all. We only really need to worry about list and dictionary. List is essentially an array in JavaScript, exact same thing, just different names. And a dictionary, I think in JavaScript are just called objects. So because Python is an object-oriented programming language, to name them dictionaries versus objects. We'll be working with dictionaries specifically for our CSVs because what they are key value pairs. And that means every um, instance of data inside of a dictionary requires both a key and a value. Whereas within a list or an array, you just have different instances of data attributes separated by a delimiter, like a comma. Okay, we mentioned that classes are like blueprints for objects, and scripts are the files that contain these classes. So scripts are just files. So like if you hop into your terminal and type something like touch python.py, you're creating a Python file. And you could run that file from either your bash terminal using Python and then passing in the file name, or within the Python terminal itself using an import. And I'll show you how to do that in a sec as well. So yes. Last thing, virtual environments. We may not have time to get through this today, and if we don't, it's okay because it's going to be covered tomorrow. And yeah,
Are we using Venv or are we using PyEnv for our virtual environments?
I'm going to demo everything with Ven,
Okay.
VENV. Um, just learn that at first because it's, the vanilla virtual environment built into Python. PyEnv is great. It gives you like a lot of it gives a lot of improvements that will make your life easier. But as a DevOps engineer working in various environments, you're not always going to be working in the comforts of your own local machine. You might
Hmm.
be reaching into an environment that does not have pyenv installed. And so you'll have the choice of either trying to install pyenv and get it set up or just work with what you have, which would be VND.
Cool.
What's that word? Pi env? What is it?
Yeah, this is, they're both libraries. But VENV is built into Python. So when you install Python on your local machine, VNV is instantaneously available. PyEnv has to be installed separately because it does not come packaged with Python. And let's look at some documentation. Simple Python version management, but not as simple as the vanilla VENV. It allows for some additional functionality. So you could change global Python version as a per user basis. Supports, well, that's kind of vague because technically VENV does that as well. Um, Allows you to override Python version with an environment variable.
Oh, I have a random question. You can't open up pictures in the terminal, huh? There, you have to install like a separate library in order to be able to view pictures.
In a terminal. Yeah, I don't think I've ever done that before, but in VS Code, that shouldn't be a problem because you'll be able to open up VS images in VS
Oh
Code.
yeah, yeah, I know VS Code, but terminal you can't. There's no images or anything. Can't do that.
Yeah, no, I've never never even thought to explore that. That's very interesting. Now I'm gonna have something to Google later. Um, but yeah, no, you'll have to find other ways of interacting with images, like using commands like wget to just grab the image and then view it from your local machine. Okay, so let's start running through some of this code. Where is my VS Code? Might be on a different desktop. Sorry, where is it? We do this. lost my VS Code. I highly recommend learning how to use workspaces in VS Code, especially once you start working with a large range of projects. Oh, there it is. It was on the other desktop. And this case, this lets me just pull up everything related to Platoon. We'll go back to this window later on for SSHing, and for now, we'll go to our README. Okay, so Python fundamentals. We are at the point where we're running through our lab, and what we're going to do is basically set up some simple Python code. So open up your terminals, make sure you're following along. All the code that you're going to need is provided inside of the README, but it's good to have the muscle memory of running these commands yourself. So what we're going to do first is we're going to make a new project. I don't like to have my projects in the same curriculum. So I'm going to cd up one directory. I'm going to go into DevOps Charlie projects. Ooh, what's it complaining about? Wow. Don't mind that. That's related to a library called AutoJump that I use on my local machine. And now that I'm in this directory, I'm going to make a new one. It's going to be that granular. And I'm going to call this Python CSV lab. And inside this directory, I'm going to make a new file called py-csv-v1.py. And that is a Python script. One of the very first things that you can do in a Python script is import any necessary modules that you require. In our case, since we're learning about CSVs, we're going to go ahead and import the vanilla CSV module or library that is built into Python. So let's do that. I'm going to save. And now let's add some additional code. Let's not worry about classes just yet. Let's do some basic, something a little more basic. So we're going to do a with open. And let's see, do I have my... yes, Jeremy?
Can you go over real quick how you open the Python file after making it in your in VS Code?
Sure. Okay, so this command code is not built in any shell environment. It's unique to VS Code. And if I didn't have this installed, I would have to do something like touch to make my file. I'm going to go ahead and make V2 because I know we're going to need a V2. And then I would have to manually open it up with a text editor like Vim. But I don't want to use Vim. I want to use code. So it's been a very long time since I set this up. I think it's actually inside of the install fest documentation though. But
Yeah, I have it. I didn't see it because my Zoom was cutting it off. So
cool.
I got it though.
I'm here. I am curious. Okay, so within our Python script, we're going to do with open.
So I have a question. Over there, where do you find that? The Python preview fundamentals MD? I'm on there, but I'm not. It doesn't look like what yours looks like.
I'm sorry, everyone. I said I was going to do this and then I forgot. But yeah, thank you for calling that out. So I was mentioning before lecture that I was going to show you how to pull down the list changes to your old machine. So if we go to Platoon 2025 and we go to my curriculum Charlie, let's see what branch on. I am on this branch that I created. I'm going to switch over to main because I got nothing else to do here. I'm done with everything I got to do here. So git switch, git checkout main. And now I can see that my main branch is behind by 17 commits. And again, if I do a remote dash dash v, the only remote repository I have is the source repository. So I forgot to even fork this, which I like to do, so I might do that later. But for now, I know that I'm behind, so I want to catch up. What can I do? Does anyone know?
Git pull.
Git pull.
That's one of the very first things I can do. I'm also going to throw this in there. I also like to fetch before I pull. The difference between fetch and pull is fetch just grabs the branch history, the commit history. So if teammates are, for example, pushing up changes in a new branch, you could get that data onto your local machine without actually overwriting your local changes, right? So it's this step. It's a habit for me. It's just part of my flow. I like to do it, so I always do it. So just like git pull, you would say git fetch and you specify the branch. So I'm going to say git fetch main. No space left on device. Yeah. I need to clear up some hard drive space, but let's power through this. Oh, I have to specify my my remote. So I'm going to say git pull origin name. I think I might have forgotten to do that with my git fetch, but yeah, that's what I forgot. With a git fetch and a git pull, the first thing you pass in is actually the remote repository or the name of the remote repository. So again, by default, your remote repository is going to be called origin. And so I pass an origin, and then I specify what branch I want to pull from. So because I pulled from main where all of the changes are, it's implemented all of these changes. And then there's like a nice little visual to show where those changes were made. And so let me know right now if you're having any issues with the git pull. Raise your hand.
Mine is saying fatal error. Main does not appear to be a Git repository.
Okay.
Same for me.
What happens when you run git remote dash dash v?
Origin, the GitHub code Platoon DevOps curriculum, fetch, and then a push.
And then when you do the git pull, you passed in the origin, right?
Say again, git pull.
You passed in the origin as the first argument.
Origin then main, or just origin?
Origin then main.
All right, and then git fetch main.
Yeah, you don't have to do the fetch.
Origin then main. Okay.
Yeah. When you do the pull, I believe it also, I don't know this for sure. I believe it also pulls down what you would normally grab from a fetch. Like I said, I like to do the fetch just out of habit. And
Okay.
basically makes sense to do it before a pull in case you have changes locally that you don't want overwritten. Okay, did that work though?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Anybody else having issues?
Yeah, I'm having
I'm a-
issues.
Okay.
I thought I had done this during the install fest. So I
Mhm.
thought I went through the Git GLI. Whenever I type anything in with Git, I receive an error called fatal : not a Git repository. So I'm guessing I haven't defined it properly.
Oh, that's just saying you're not inside of a Git repository. Whenever you clone or fork down a Git repository from a URL, you'll see a .git directory created. So if I were to cd up one directory and do an LSA, that doesn't exist here. If I go to status, it's going to tell me the same thing, not a Git repository. You can't run any commands, any Git CLI commands on anything that's not registered repository. So are you running it? Where are you running?
I tried both in the terminal with my VS, And now I'm back in my normal Ubuntu terminal under do Charlie
Okay, and is
or
that,
DevOps Charlie.
that where you clone down the repository?
I can't remember, to be honest, but I just tried the git clone and then the URL,
Mhm.
at least the URL that was on the install fest. I'm not sure if that's correct because I see. I think I have to change. I have to put my usernames in there.
Yeah. When you do let's go through cloning. When you clone from anywhere remotely, and I'm going to clone this down instead. So now that I've made a fork, I want this on my local machine because I don't already have it on my local machine. I'm going to make sure this goes into a separate folder. So I'm going to make something like maker Charlie my fork.
It said you didn't have space, so that's like a different problem.
Yeah, that was a very confusing message. And I just assumed that I was running out of space because I know I am running out of space. Like I had to delete a bunch of stuff like the other night because it wouldn't let me record videos anymore. Um, but in this case, I didn't pass in my command correctly, so I'm not sure where that message was coming from.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, it might just be a strange message that comes from what it's trying to do. It's trying to fetch from it's expecting a remote URL here, but I passed in a branch. There's no URL named main. There's only origin. So whatever it's trying to do, it's freaking out because it can't do it, and it's spitting me this error message. And okay, so now that I made my directory, I'm going to go into that directory, tap to autocomplete, and I can do a git clone in here. So this will now clone it to my local machine by doing ls. I see this folder's been created. I can now cd instance directory, and if I look at everything in here, including hidden files, I can see that there is a .git folder now. So this is uh, directory status. It'll let me know that everything is up to date.
Real quick, Julius, when you were doing those commands a little bit higher, you were doing it from the folder do Charlie. So I did find my folder. I have a folder for curriculum
Okay.
that I did clone, during the install fest. I'm not able to run any git commands from my normal DevOps Charlie folder, but I am in the curriculum Charlie. Was there something I missed to allow that to happen?
No, that's perfectly normal. So when you clone, whatever directory you're in, it's going to clone that repository into its own subdirectory. That's the directory that's going to have the .git folder.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So I have another question that was a little bit confusing to me. I saw that you forked the repo and then you cloned it. How is that different from just cloning?
Right. Sure.
Are there anything that will be missing if I fork it before I clone it? Because when you do a git pull, if you forked it, does it go back and pull from the original repo?
Yes. When you fork, it's going to pull everything from the source repository. But now these are like two instances, right? There's the source repository, and then there's my fork. And
Yeah.
that's my clone of my fork. So if I do a git status, it's going to tell me that everything is up to date with origin main, just like you saw on the other directory. But if we do a git remote --v, v for verbose, so we get the full URL. My origin repository now is
Gonna be yours.
exactly, it's my fork. And if I were to go back to Oh, back to the source clone. It's going to tell me that my remote is the original location, Platoon DevOps. So basically now, like we're seeing 4 different instances of the same code, right? There's the source repository, there's my fork, there's my clone of the source repository on the right side, and then my clone of the source repository on all of these instances are now going to be independent of everything else. If you make changes in one, it's not going to be reflected in another. You have to run the commands to communicate those changes. That's why we have the sync option in the UI, and that's essentially the same thing as dealing with git pull.
Okay. So the correct way is we should fork it because I just cloned it from the code platoon repo. So I should fork it first and then just clone it from my own repo so I can push to my repo. And I just sync it to make sure that my current fork is up to date with the code platoon repo.
Yes, exactly. And
Okay.
do a git remote add. First, I'm going to grab the URL using this. So I'm going to do git remote add. I'm going to copy, paste this URL. I also have to specify a name for this. So like, let's say, I don't know, maybe I'll name it source this time. Git remote add source and then the URL. And then if I do git remote dash dash v again, it's going to tell me that I now have 2 different remote connections. I can git pull or git fetch from either one. So if I do a git fetch source main, it's gonna grab from Platoon DevOps. And if I do a git fetch origin main, it's gonna pull from my fork. So this practice allows you to push changes to your fork and then pull changes from the source. And it's just cleaner that way. If I was pushing and pulling changes from the source instead of a fork, things could get out of hand pretty fast. Okay. Are we all synced up with having the latest version of the curriculum?
What is the best way? Because I just cloned it from the code platoon. Do I have to go to the GitHub website and create fork it using the UI? Because
No.
currently on my machine, I have it cloned from the code platoon repository. I don't have it forked.
Yeah.
I didn't clone it from a fork.
Yeah. The easiest way to do it right now would be to go through the UI. Is that the only way? No, there's also another command line you install yet. So let's not even worry about trying to create
Okay. All right.
your terminal right now. I'll show the GitHub CLI way later in the curriculum. It comes in handy, especially when you're just making new stories. But yeah, let's not worry about that right now. If we're all to our Python CSV lab, and right, we were working on writing some code. So let's see. Talked about encapsulation. We started the lab. We're starting some basic scripting. I'm going to write, I forgot this sty. Now that I have the repository up to date, I now also have a CSV file. How do I get there from here? So if I go to ls up to directories, one week 0, 2, day 0, 1, and then page resources, lessons, then page resources. Very, very deeply nested. I can see if there's a file in there. And the file that I want is in there, hw_200.csv. So again, I'm gonna just press up, command left to go to the start, replace ls with cp, and then command right to go back to the end. And then I'm gonna say, put it in the same directory that I'm in right now. Is already like essentially pre-established, right? This is how the CSV module was designed. This is how these libraries and functions and classes were designed. So we're essentially just following the documentation for how to use these things. And case, let's think through what's happening right now. We have a CSV file, right? Comma separated values, multiple rows. We specify that we want a delimiter using the empty space. So at the end of each line in the CSV dict reader will know to then create a new row of data inside of the reader attribute. So if we do for entry in data and we run a print, it's going to run print on every line of data converted from the CSV. Is everyone tracking so far? Cool. So I think it was print, entry. Yeah, Jeremy?
Are we supposed to be at the same line as you with doing the whole with open and that whole path?
Yeah, no, it'd be easiest if you just have the HW_200 CSV in the same directory as this file. I'm having hard drive space issues, so I can't copy the file. That's what was going on up here. I was trying to move it over. I was trying to copy it, and it's just telling me I've got no space.
Okay, and that file should be in module 1 under, if we just go to it, and then
side of module 1. Lessons, page sources, and yeah, that's what I'm pointing to essentially from my. Once you have this, go ahead, save. It looks like it's auto-saving. So let me try running this. So I'm going to do a Python pycsv v1.py. I'm using the Python command, and I'm passing in a parameter. The parameter is the name of this file, or the script, I should say. And the Python command will know to accept this argument and to run it as a script and then spit out the output. In this case, we're not actually returning anything. More on that later. Instead, we're printing, again, every line converted from the CSV. So is everyone seeing what I'm seeing?
I'm not. Can you kind of refresh my memory here? And I'm trying to find the file, the actual CSV file. I'm trying to follow along and try to find the CSV file, but I'm still a bit confused where it's at.
Okay. So in today's lesson, we're on week 2. Once you've updated your repository by pulling from the main branch, you should have exactly the same file structure that we have in the source repository, which now has inside of day 1 a lessons directory, and inside of lessons a page resources directory. And inside of page resources is where I tossed that CSV file.
Okay, I got it. Thank you.
So this is a very, 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 very basic Python script that we have just created, and we are able to read from an external file, the CSV, and manipulate that data within Python. So let's take it a step further now. And let's
Just real quick question. Can you show me the command that you did again to double check which I guess Git repository we're looking at? Because I don't know if this is mine or if this is the Code Platoon one.
Sure. Let me switch over to the other terminal. That's if we do a git status, this will tell us not what you want. Well, it's telling me that I'm on origin main, so it's half of what you want, right? Because in this case, if I do a git remote -v, it's reminding me that my origin in this directory is my fork. Branch is up to date with my fork. Maybe we'll spend some more time on aliases later on. I created this little alias. It basically runs multiple git commands. So this is usually how I check where I'm at. It tells me what my remote origins are and where I am right now. I'm inside of my
I think you
origin.
made us set that up last week.
Did I?
Yeah.
Yeah. If you don't have it set up, then it's really just a combination of git remote -v, and honestly can't remember what the second one is. I would have to look it up.
Because mine's saying that I'm on the main branch and my branch is up to date when I do the Git status. And it is I guess my fork version because it shows my name.
Mhm.
But I don't see that file in the page resource.
Okay. Now, is your fork up to date with the source?
I thought that's what we did when we went to the page. And you're like, click that button when we were on the actual page.
Let's sync the fork. Yeah, can we see your screen? Can you share?
Sure. Let me go back to, oh no, this is it. I think. Yeah. Okay. That's not it. There's another, this is it. Okay. Maybe I'll put this over. And it's here, but it's not here. Because when I do the list, it only shows me this one. Unless it's
Yeah, Julius. I just looked it up. You did when we were creating the custom aliases. I think you called it G remote, where it does the git remote -v and git branch -vv. I gave it that alias.
Well, yeah, so you could use that to check. But Paige, can we see your screen?
oh, I'm not hilarious. I thought I was. Um Share. Can you see it now?
Not
Yes.
seen anything.
Yeah, so it's updated here, and I can see it here, but it's not here because it's the only
Isn't it?
when I do the ls command.
You see that? I just drew on your screen.
So I had to turn on my camera. My bandwidth is really low. I'm kind of really far away from my router. So if you can you do that one more time? Whatever oh, over here? Yes.
Yeah. So it is showing up. So if we look inside
Right.
of the terminal, let's make sure that you're in the right directory. All right, can we do a pwd?
Sure. This
ls. Okay, that's And do do a git status.
Does she have to do a git pull to update it or to update her
Yeah, did
code?
you do the git?
Well, that was the thing. It said it was up to date. So
Right.
should I do it anyway?
Do a git fetch. Git
So
fetch.
get and
Yeah.
that's it.
Origin main. Okay. Okay, it pulled some stuff. Try git status
That's
now,
weird.
what it says. Now it's saying that you're behind by 9 commits. So now you can do a git pull.
Okay. Because it said it was up to date, right? So I didn't think I had to do those other steps because that's what it said. But
That's really confusing. I don't know why it was saying it was up to date when it wasn't. I wonder if it's got something to do with you being on WSL.
it works now. Thank you.
Okay, cool. All right, let's see.
Before we move on, can we also go back to the copy portion? I don't know if anyone else is stuck on that, but I don't know what to insert in file location. I have the CSVS or CSV.
Okay. Can
but-
you share your screen?
Sure.
Okay, so inside of your current directory, do an ls. Do an ls dot dot / dot dot. Okay, press up on your keyboard / do dash Charlie. Curriculum Charlie. Yeah, press up again and then add curriculum Charlie. All right, press. Okay. Now, instead of pressing enter at the end, just start using tab. So press up one more time. Press tab. Start typing out where you want to go. So module 01. It might be case sensitive, the tab thing. Yeah. Now, if you hit tab, I'll finish. Hit tab again to see what's in there. Now go to week 01. Or sorry, we're on week 2, my bad. Week 2. Should just be day 1, and then you could tap to autocomplete. And then it should be lessons. And then page resources. Cool. Now just go ahead and hit enter. Okay. I guess that was kind of unnecessary, but press up. And are you on a Mac or a Windows?
Windows.
Ooh. Is it control or
Oh.
home? Just hit home, right?
So I know this is like counterproductive, but if you look over on Explorer and then you right click that CSV, yeah, right click that, right click it again, and then reveal in File Explorer, you can just see it. It's not showing on here, but you can just see it, and then I just copied it that way. So you can, it brings up the Explorer. You can just copy it that way. But I know you got to learn to do it in the terminal. That's what I just used because it.
Okay. And that's the file location or that's the initial?
Page resources is where it's at.
Okay.
Yeah.
So are we going back to the copy?
Yeah. Yeah, if you I was just trying to get you to replace the ls in the previous command so you don't have to like redo the whole path thing.
Okay.
Yeah. On a Mac, you would just do a command left to go to the start of the line. And I think on a Windows it would just be home, right?
Yeah. So am I putting what am I putting in right here? Or is
That
this
exact same path that you just did above the, yeah, without the ls. Ls is command. And then the second argument you want to pass in is the destination, which should be your current directory. So just a period and a forward slash.
space after the forward slash?
I can't see this part of your. Let's see.
About now.
Yeah, just one though. You don't need two of them. Okay. All right. Do an ls to verify that it's in there. Cool.
Okay, that's it.
Mhm.
Was everyone able to follow along if anyone's behind?
That's so hard.
Stop.
Do you understand the dot dot that was in that path?
Yes, because that goes backwards, right?
Yes. Yes.
So this is the typical way we copy files in the terminal.
Yeah.
I
CP.
remember somebody said like when you understand the terminal, it becomes easier than Explorer. Like this seems so this seems so difficult.
It's gonna take a while to get used to. I mean, especially like with how long everyone's gotten used to just using a UI and a mouse, right? Like
Yeah.
new habits are hard. Like they take time.
Yeah, but it seems like the UI is objectively easier than the terminal.
Yeah, but you won't always have the UI available.
Yeah. Yeah, I get it.
All right, cool. So I think we're all good, right?
No, Julius, I have a quick question. I'm
Sure.
also experiencing some issues. Let me share my screen. Which one is that? This one? Okay. Can you see that?
I think it's starting to load. It's yeah,
Okay. Okay, so I think I have some kind of an issue with this and sign that's coming up because I'm trying to run the file through this just start button over here, run Python file, and I received this error. When I ran the debugger up here, I was able to actually get the information out, and then it actually tells me, I think it points to where my issue is,
Mhm.
or maybe it didn't. It gives me an error code, I think, unless this is something else.
Okay, well, let's go back down to what command are you trying to run?
I'm just running this run Python file in VS Code.
Right. But from the
So,
terminal, like how are you doing it?
I wasn't actually running it from the terminal, so maybe that's part of the problem.
Oh, okay. Yeah, could you try it from the terminal?
So in this case, I would try running this specific file that I'm in now.
Yeah. So you start with Python.
Oh, okay. Maybe that's what's going on. I'm a newbie. And then reference the file.
Yep.
Okay. Yep. I'm just a newbie. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. All right. Okay. How's everyone feeling? Because we've been sitting here for a while. Should we keep powering along to talk more about classes? I got one yes. Or do folks need a break?
I need a break.
Time for a break.
Take a break. Take a 15. Give me a chance to delete some stuff off my hard drive.